Okay, we're back on the internet.
We are?
Yes, we are, Martin.
How many levels of this show are there?
Oh, that's...
Here's a radio.
But here's a question for you that they asked.
Okay.
What is the toughest thing about being labeled Hollywood's nicest comedian?
Just stupid jerks who want to talk to you all the time.
Okay. Rula, how has traveling or living outside the Middle East changed your perspective on the area where you grew up?
It changed it a lot, actually, because I realized that leaders...
Do you live in America?
I do.
Oh, you do?
I do. And
everybody likes America.
Yeah.
Everybody votes
Well,
with
I
their
lived
feet.
also in Europe for a long time. But what intrigued me about this country, that the question that people asked, and one day when the people start asking the question, why should we be paying taxes without representation? From that, you have the most eloquent idea, which is the Declaration of Independence. And one day, a citizen asked herself, why should I be sitting in this side of the bus? And from that, you have civil rights movement and the election of a great president that teach the rest of the world how to be fair and good to your minorities. And this is why I take back home. And I hope we will be different with our minorities, because this is the future.
We do have a lot of problems, but we are a self-editing edition, aren't we?
Look,
I mean,
it's an
America
amazing...
does somehow come
Great
up with-
ideas,
Yeah,
great ideas.
I
If
mean,
you think about Frederick Douglass and the way when he said,
Right.
you know, a struggle is actually, must be a struggle, because power never concede anything without demand.
No.
And people can actually, like
got
you,
it.
Bill, might, you know, favor freedom, but in the end, they profess to favor freedom, but in the end, they actually deprecate agitation. It's like people that wants rain without thunders, or wants oceans without the many waters. These people...
Or that stink.
Or that stink. And I think a struggle, I know that
What's
you
going on
sometimes
in
we
there?
complain about struggle,
No.
but it must be a struggle, because it can be moral or physical, but it must be a struggle.
We did have 700,000 men die resolving the conflict over slavery, so it wasn't like it was a smooth transition where we are today.
And the Constitution took 7 years to be
Mostly
ratified.
from disease.
Mostly from disease.
So
Most of the deaths in the Civil War were from disease. It's from
Where did you hear that?
That's a fact. Isn't that true?
That is true, and
Just
actually,
because the two of you agreed.
No.
No,
We've gone so far around that we...
No, I agree too, Bob.
Okay, Marty, that does it.
No, it was.
Looks like you lost.
It was dysentery. You know.
And they had hookers. That's how you got hookers.
What
Oh my
happened?
God.
And General Hooker.
The General Hooker.
Jesus, I
it was the
drift
camp
mentally
followers.
for 3 seconds. and this everything.
That's how hookers came to be.
It's more than 3 seconds. Be
All
honest.
right.
Here's a question.
30 minutes.
Here's a question for you, Mr. Troublemaker. Have we reached a point where the threat of a full-on assault by Tea Party money is enough to discourage candidates from seeking election? I guess they're asking this of you because the person who defeated you in Nebraska was one of Sarah Palin's Grizzlies, was she not?
Yeah. I don't think so, man. I think you've got a problem with people just not wanting to run, regardless of whether they're getting whacked from the left or whacked from the right. It can be unpleasant. So, you know, the big question is whether or not citizens are willing to cross the line from being a private person where you know, other than the government's right to, you know, Google you and find out what your gene code
But you're not a flaming liberal. I mean, you're a Democrat, you're a progressive, but you were a veteran. You fought for this country. What can a guy like you ever win in Nebraska?
Well, it's hard to imagine a guy like me winning anyway. If you don't really know me. I mean, that's the problem. If you really know me, you
Not
say-
like McCain and Lindsey Graham, certainly. I don't, you know.
Well, no, there's a lot of things that went into me losing besides just the Tea Party. I mean, I spent 10 years in New York, and that was probably the biggest and most difficult. But the big
Really,
issue...
they held that against you?
Wouldn't you?
Really? Bob Kerrey went to New York?
Oh, yeah. No, liberal New York.
Yeah.
Remember right after 9/11, they liked New York?
They did.
Yeah, they forgot that fast.
Dick Lugar didn't really live in Indiana. That sort of slowed him down in his election as well.
Oh, really? Where did he live?
He lived in Washington.
Yeah.
He had a post office box or something.
Right.
Yeah. People want you to live in the state you represent.
That's the same thing. A lot of Hollywood stars say they live in exotic places. You know, Johnny Depp lives in France, and you know, they all live here. They all live in fucking Beverly Hills. They all lie. They do. They all live in here. Michelle, what has big business done to show that they can be trusted should the deregulation you advocate occur? What a great question.
That they can be
What has big business done to show that they can be trusted should the deregulation you advocate occur?
big business in general in America is the greatest provider of jobs.
That doesn't really answer the question.
Trusted in terms of what? I mean.
Well, I think they mean that when the regulations were let go, starting with Clinton, getting rid of Glass-Steagall, they pretty much tanked the economy.
Glass-Steagall would not have prevented any of the big failures, not a single one.
I've heard a different opinion on that, but okay.
I could list them, but let's not do that.
Okay,
remember,
but certainly
banking and the oil industry are the most regulated industries in America.
That doesn't mean that, well, I don't know if that's true, and even if it is, it doesn't mean that
And I can point to several regulations which would have actually helped cause the crisis. Like when regulators say, mortgage debt is better. So if you have a lot of mortgage debt at your bank, you don't have to have as many reserves against it. So what do banks do? They gobble up mortgage debt. They say, you know what? Governments don't default. So when you have government debt on your books, it's okay. You don't have to reserve any money against it.
So you're saying
so they gobble up government debt. And then, you know what? Governments default.
So you're saying the crash of 2008 would have been abetted with less regulation?
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
All right, well, that's out of the box. That's way out of the box.
I would tell you.
We like that on our show. We don't want to be in the box. You're not in the box.
The crash of
You're way
2008
out of
was
the box.
caused by human nature.
Human nature, exactly. And you know what? That's why capitalism is the right system, because you have to go by human nature. Communism was wrong because it tried to make the river flow in the wrong direction. You have to use human nature's selfishness. But that flowing river does need dams and locks on it, because if it's just let go, then you'll have floodplains. You gotta sort of control the river a little, can't you? I agree. Flow it in the right direction.
If I just could, Senator Kerrey knows this. The problem is we needed regulations for these unregulated things, these bundles where you owned this week's mortgage payment and you owned the interest on the mortgage and so forth and so on. But what happens is Washington tends to kill ants with sledgehammers. And so you get a bunch of regulations that are stupid, that are actually counterproductive, and you really don't get to the problem.
Some of them, that's right.
You don't get to the problem.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. We're going to let you go. We'll see you next week.
Real Time with Bill Maher, Friday night at 10. Ask Bill and his guests your questions right after the show at HBO.com.